Welcome to the Chronically Healthy Life show. When you hear the word chronically, do you automatically associate it with chronic disease? We all do. It's been programmed right into us. But what if we flip that whole idea on its head? Let's discover how we can create chronic health in our bodies, our minds, our finances, our relationships, and in our lives. Welcome to the place where chronically means healthy, wealthy, joyful, and ridiculously alive. Let's flip the script together.
So today on our show, we have Kelly Fox with us. So hi, Kelly.
Hello.
So Kelly is one of our Chronic Health Collective coaches, and you are from the Fearless generation. So Kelly, let's peel back the onion a little bit. Most people don't want to talk about fear at all. So how did you get into it? So let's talk about your backstory. How did you? What drive you to become a fearless coach?
Yeah, well, I think most people, when they think of fear, they think of physical fears, like fear of flying or fear of heights or fear of spiders, right? And we talk about emotional fears. And so there's lots of times when people come to us and they're like, I'm fearless. I skydive. I, ski. I do this, right? But we're like, well, can you say I love you first? Can you walk into a room and, show up completely as yourself? Those are the fears that we talk about. So growing up, I'm the youngest of 8 girls. So I felt very much like just, oh, it's just another girl. Did not feel special or anything. And luckily for me, or not luckily, my brother, the first boy, was born 4 years after me. And so it was so exciting. He got all new stuff. He was in the paper. It was this huge thing. And so I just felt like so unseen and so unimportant. And I grew up that way. I grew up in musical theater, and that was kind of my place to shine. I hammed it up. And when I was young, I didn't have that fear, right? I didn't, I was young and I wanted to be seen so badly, and it didn't matter if it was positive or negative. It didn't matter. I just wanted to be seen, and I was, bubbly and joyful. But at a certain age, maybe around 10, I became much more aware of my weight, much more aware of, comparing myself to my older sisters, much more aware of, people's, my perceived people's disappointment in me. I didn't do well at school. So I started to feel dumb, and I didn't feel pretty, and I didn't feel like I was enough of whatever. And those fears, those thoughts started to build on each other. And after a while, I just shrank. I wanted to hide. Now, there were moments where I was bold and I wanted to be seen, usually when I was on stage, because I was playing a character, right? I wasn't me. I was playing a character that had to be loud or silly or boisterous. And so it wasn't me being that, it was a character. But then off the stage, it was me. And I did have some really good friends and a good community at church. And so there were places where I felt safe to be myself. But even at home, I didn't necessarily feel safe to be myself because I was constantly comparing myself to my sisters and felt like I was disappointing my parents. And so, that just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then when I was in college, I just happened to pass this depression screening. And my sister were like, yeah, we'll go in. We'll check it out. And I discovered that I was clinically depressed. At that point, I had no idea that I was different from anyone else. I thought everybody thought the way I did. I thought everybody felt the way that I did. I didn't know that it was the chemicals in my brain that was causing me to feel, um, detached from, when something good was going on, or sad when I didn't necessarily need to be sad, or, kind of, sit in those negative thoughts and own them. And that's when I started my journey to really discover myself, become really aware of how I felt and how I thought, and that eventually led me to fearless living.
I feel like there's a lot of parallel between me and you. I'm the youngest of three. I have two sisters, and they are like 10 years older than me. Of course, my sister is tall and beautiful and smart, and I'm the dumb one that was born on April Fool's Day. Of course, I'm the foolish one. So I feel that the parents not seeing me part. Also, I have eczema, so I tend to hide, just because I'm not confident. So I guess that leads to my sentence. Is there any relationship between confidence and fear?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Our fear wants to keep us safe. So anytime that we try to stretch and step out of our comfort zone, it puts up the red lights. And it's like, no, that's not safe. We don't know the outcome. We don't know what's going to happen. What if this, previous bad outcome happens again? Let's just stay in our comfort zone. And so we might be confident at those things that we're really comfortable with. But when it comes to doing something new, or it comes to even expanding a little bit, oh no, there's no confidence there whatsoever, right? But it's as we continue to take those baby steps, then the confidence grows. So confidence grows in the doing, right? So if you're not doing, that confidence isn't there.
So what would you, I guess, how would someone know that they are living in fear without, like, if without admitting that they're in fear? How would someone know that they're actually living in fear?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, all of us are living in fear, because fear is a biological, it's something that we're born with, right? It's a survival mechanism, and to keep us physically safe, right? We were born with it. It's programmed into our brain all over the place now that we've discovered. It's not just in, what my mom calls our dinosaur brain, that, that oldest part of our brain where language and, logic doesn't exist. It's all over. And so all of us have some kind of fear. And so, but symptoms of it are, if you find yourself isolating, if you find yourself procrastinating, if you find yourself feeling disappointed or frustrated, those are all signs of fear. And people don't necessarily associate those things with fear, but they're all symptoms of some type of fear, because we either have an expectation of ourselves or someone else. We're either avoiding a conversation and making all these assumptions about how someone's feeling or what they're thinking. All of those things are symptoms of fear.
How does your parents come into play in your fear? Right. I think we have very different things. Like my mom is, I perceive your mom is very strong. My mom is like the opposite, right? But I guess it depends on how you're raised. that, you know, your parents has a big part of how you handle fear, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. Well, you guys are a little familiar with my mom, right? Because she's the other
Yeah.
half of Fearless Generations, right?
Yes.
But who she is now is quite different than who she was when I was growing up. And she's talked about how she's a recovering perfectionist. Well, she was not a recovering perfectionist when I was little. So I felt like I never measured up. You know, she wanted me to present myself in a certain way so that I reflected well on her. And, you know, people would think she's a good mother because my hair is, you know, perfectly in place. I'm perfectly dressed. I'm, you know, perfectly behaving. You know, I'm slender. Which I was not. I was always a chubby kid. And so like I got put on Weight Watchers when I was in 8th grade. Like,
Wow.
yeah. So it was a constant feeling of not being enough and feeling really like I'm really disappointing her. Now that was my perception, right? Like, because now we're adults and we can have conversations. That wasn't her intention at all. And it was all the stuff going on with her, but that's how I perceived it as a child. And and then with my dad, you guys know my story with my dad. And so my dad was very loving. I felt very seen by him, very accepted by him. I felt like we could relate to each other. You know, he didn't feel like he was very smart. He didn't graduate from college. He was a rancher. And so, you know, when he was growing up, and then and then he didn't finish school, so his job was always lower than my mom's, you know, because my mom went to college, got a master's, was a teacher, all this kind of stuff, right? So we kind of related to each other. But then after he died when I was 15, that was gone. So that safety net, that person who saw me, that person who completely accepted me for who I was, that person I felt unconditionally loved by, was gone. And I never felt like I was going to get that back. I never felt like I was going to get married. I never felt like I was going to have kids. And you guys know, like, now I've been married for almost 25 years and I have 6 kids, right? So the younger me had no idea, right? Could not at all see how I live now. And so, you know, that younger me just felt like nobody would love her for who she was. And so that was different. And I told you about how the miracle boy, right? And comparing to my sisters. So I just never felt like I fit in my family, with, you know, with my disappointing my mom, and, you know, not being as good as my sisters. So yeah, my upbringing, my perception of my upbringing totally added to that feeling of fear just running my life.
So if you are to talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, well, I have had conversations with my younger self.
I love it.
But you know, just tell her that she is loved, to accept love, to seek after loving herself, because you can't really feel the love of others. You don't believe in the love of others if you can't love yourself. So I think that's why my perception was so low of other people's opinion of me, because my opinion of myself was so low. And so I couldn't see other people loving me. So I would tell her to love herself. She was, you know, she was beautiful. She was fun. She was loving. She was caring, and or she is, however you want to say it. She had good friends, and to see the good things about herself instead of focusing on, where she felt she was lacking.
I feel like friends are important. It's an important part in your story. As your friends experience the same, I won't say treatment, it's the same kind of fear that you have, or they like complete the opposite of you?
I think that my friends definitely had fears and issues with their parents, but that wasn't something that we talked about. One of my best friends, she's still a very good friend of mine, even, I don't know, 30 something years later. I just dated myself. But she definitely had issues with how her and her mom got along. Her parents were divorced. She barely saw her dad. So there were definitely issues there. She was an only child. There was a lot of pressure on her, but that's something that I can see in looking back. I don't know if as a teenager, you can really be aware of what's going on that way with your friends, to the extent of it. Like, you can be a witness, you can have assumptions, you might talk about it a little, like, oh my gosh, my mom's driving me crazy, kind of a thing, right? But you don't really get into the nitty gritty, right? Especially not in the 90s. I think now people talk about their feelings a little bit more, or it's a little bit, people go a little bit deeper now, just because of social media and, their, influencers talk about their issues, right? And so it's more of a normal thing, but back in the 90s, people didn't talk about stuff like that,
That is true. We just dated ourselves too. So on that, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Kelly, we'll continue the conversation.
When you look in the mirror, do you see skin that's just dry, tired, and stressed? It's time for a new ritual. Introducing Deep Love, the blue botanical face cream by Coolness. We've captured their tranquil essence of blue botanicals in a cloud-soft formula that deeply soothes irritation and restores your natural, healthy glow. This isn't just skincare, it's an act of self-care. It's Deep Love. Find your calm only at coolness.com. Scan the QR code now to visit our website.
Welcome back to the Chronically Healthy Life show. In the first segment, Minna was digging into Kelly's backstory a little bit. That's the first time we learned so much from you, Kelly. So thank you for sharing. We're going to get a little bit more deeper into that on the second segment. So as the youngest of 8 girls, I did not know that. That's pretty amazing. And I did not know you had a younger brother. I thought you were actually the baby of the family. It seems like, since you lost your rock, your dad at 15, you were having a lot of fear growing up. You were in a depression stage without even knowing it, right? And you mentioned after college at some point, you started working towards where you are today. I want to know from that point, from college, where this girl is so fearful of everything, so depressed, like diagnosed as having depression. How are you where you are today, like dancing on stage in front of people? Because you mentioned you were like musical, definitely you let yourself out, but now you are letting yourself out. Like you're getting in front of people, you're not afraid to be seen. But here's the $1 million question. How did you join your mom to do it? That's what I really want to know. So
yeah.
I'll give you the stage there.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the stage, so give it to me. Well, I've acted throughout my entire life. I've been somewhat comfortable on stage my entire life. Now, during audition process, no, not comfortable. But standing in the chorus, doing my part, comfortable there. But I think that I've always been able to kind of push myself to do things. So when I was 21, I went on a mission for my church for 18 months. Previous to that, I left home and worked at the Grand Canyon for 6 months. Then I worked at Disney World for 3 months. So I was pushing myself out of my comfort zone because I was aware of what was keeping me in. And I think that awareness is that key to being able to make chances or take chances. I mean, and then when I got home from my mission, I met my husband. And so that was the start of a whole new adventure, right? Believing that he really saw me, believing that he would stay, because I definitely had abandonment issues from my dad leaving, a fear of men leaving me, not loving me enough to stay. So honestly, if I'm going to be really honest, the first 7 years of our marriage was a challenge. We got married really fast though, like 7 months or something like that. So, so we were still like getting to know each other. We both went from living at our parents to like living together, so it was getting to know each other, getting to know how to live with someone in that type of relationship. And we had our first kid pretty quickly too. I got pregnant within the first 7 months. We were dealing with distance. Wow. He was working here, I was living there. And so there were a lot of challenges and it was difficult. But then now I have to do math, but a few years after we got married, we moved away from all of my support system. We went from California to Georgia for a job, and wow. Georgia is where like the crap hit the fan. Like we were there for 18 months and we separated twice. Things just got real. And he lost his father during that time all of a sudden. And so he was in a really bad place. And that's also where I found fearless living. I was 28 at the time. And I found Fearless Living, and I dove in. I studied the tools, I used the tools, and really Fearless Living is what saved our marriage, because I changed, and I started being willing to see myself differently. I also was willing to see him differently. I was willing to see my own fears. And so then I was willing to see his fears, and how our actions were being motivated by our fears. Our actions were being motivated by us trying to meet our needs, but we didn't have the skills to meet our needs without being in fear, if that makes sense. So that's when the whole thing shifted, was when I actually had skills, tools, strategies to change the way I was thinking, to change the way I was behaving, to become so aware of my fears and what they were motivating me to do, that I was able to start making baby changes. And now it's been almost 21 years. And so you see me as this person, right, who can talk, who can, show up and just wing it, who can, do the things that I do now, right? But the girl I was then, she was a shadow of who I am now. But the reason I'm this way now is because of all of the baby steps adding up, right? So I trust myself a whole lot more. I believe in my abilities a whole lot more. And so my comfort zone has extremely expanded. Do I still get scared? Of course. Do I still get motivated and act out of fear? Of course. But I'm able to recognize it faster. I'm able to shift and take better choices faster. And I'm also aware of when I'm choosing not to. And, giving myself, compassion to sit in the ick for a while before I just push myself out of it. Because I think it's important to feel the feels, and acknowledge that, hey, I feel like I am just not being seen right now. And, listen to fear. And then instead of believing it or sinking into it, say, you know what? No, I have this evidence that that's not true. I have this evidence that's not true. I can call this friend who's going to say, Kelly, you're amazing. Right? I have a support system now in place that I can take advantage of or not. And when I do, then that kind of brings me out of it. Right? When before, that 15-year-old or that teenager didn't have that awareness, didn't have that support system in place. And so she couldn't get herself out of it. But now, because I've been doing Fearless Living for so long, I have all of these tools and I can choose to use them.
That's amazing. So from what I'm hearing, since you started Fearless Living, it's changed your relationship with you and your husband. That literally saved your marriage, which I think is very amazing, because I think when people have problems with the marriage, it can go, in the wrong direction very quickly. And a lot of times you need like someone from the outside to look in to see what's wrong, right? But by following Fearless Living, you're able to start decode that yourself and put that together. So does your husband and your children live with the Fearless Living, principles and strategies, or is it just you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, when your wife tells you something or your mom tells you something, you just let it, go by, right? It's someone outside that needs to share something with you. So my husband has taken, he's worked with a fearless living coach a couple of times, so he knows the lingo. I definitely, because I approach my kids differently, obviously they're affected by that. The questions that I ask or the responses that I give are different than when they were younger. My younger kids have gotten a totally different mom than my younger kids got, right? Because as I continue to progress, I parent differently. And so that has definitely affected them. But do they do daily practices like me? No. do they necessarily follow the tools that I share with others? No. But they've definitely been affected by fearless living because of the way I behave.
So what is your daily practices?
I stepped into that, huh? So my daily practices are every morning I write 5 gratitudes. So something outside of myself that I'm grateful for, something that someone did for me, or something that showed up that I had no control over, right? I didn't do anything to bring it. And then I write 5 acknowledgments. That's something that I did. That was a stretch out of my comfort zone. That was a risk I took. That was a time where I spoke up when I normally would have been quiet. I write 5 of those every morning. So I'm continually building evidence that I am taking steps forward, and I'm continually building evidence that the universe, the world, whatever you want to call it, is for me, wants my success, wants my happiness. So that is something that I do every morning. Those are my daily practices. And then other things that I practice is having compassion for myself, being honest with myself, and taking personal responsibility. So owning my stuff and not taking on others' stuff, which is a huge thing for moms, even for wives. Husbands do that too, men do that too, not saying they don't, but yeah, I tend to take on people's energy, other people's issues, other people's challenges. I'm a problem solver as a mom. I'm the one that has to find the missing shoe, or find an interesting way of getting something done. But just taking on what is mine and letting what is not mine, be outside of me, not inside of me. So those are daily practices as well. And then I have an overarching intention that I practice every day. And that is that I'm willing to practice trusting myself more. Trusting myself is it's my number one kind of challenge. That's that's where fear gets me every time. It's like, Kelly, you don't know what you're doing. You can't trust yourself. You can't depend on yourself. That is the thing that I've have been practicing since day one of fearless living. And so it's something I'm always keeping in mind. How can I trust myself more in this moment with this decision? Trusting my intuition, trusting my gut feelings, trusting what's true and what's not, trusting that I'm capable. So those are the things that I practice every day.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah.
When you
it's really internalized, though. Okay, I've been practicing it for a long time.
Before she jumps to her question, I actually have a question on that, because of course we're always telling people to be grateful, to have gratitude for what we have in our lives. And you mentioned that you every day you're writing down 5 things you're grateful for that you have no control over. are those different every single day? Because I think a lot of people, they really, they aren't aware of so many things that's happening that is good in their lives. Or, like, what do you tell people when you say, well, I can't find 5 things that's good for me that happened today. Can I write the same thing I wrote down yesterday? Like, what, how do you help people with that?
Yeah. Well, it's a skill for, that you learn. Though a lot of people, especially the people that we work with, someone who's seeking support, gratitudes are easy. It's the acknowledgments that are hard. But it's a skill of finding those little moments within your day, because our days can seem to be repetitive, but it's going on that I'm grateful for the sun coming up, or I'm grateful for my home, or I'm grateful that my home is warm, or, whatever it might be, right? That we might all have. And it's going a little bit deeper and saying, not just that you're grateful for the sun, but how it reflects off of, the flowers or something like that, like taking it a little bit deeper. And then also being more aware of what's going on throughout your day. So I write them in the morning, but that's not when everybody writes them. Some people write them at night. Some people write them throughout the day. I do it in the morning because it forces me to remember the day before. So to really, and sometimes it is a challenge. I sit there for a while and I'm like, what even happened yesterday? Right. But that's why I do it in the morning, because it forces me to give more weight to what happened the day before. And yes, you want to do something different. Have I repeated? Of course I have. I've repeated some, like I love when I get to snuggle with my 8-year-old. So has that been one of my gratitudes? Yes, that has been one of my gratitudes several times. But, you want to be really specific. That word has a bit of a challenge for me. You want to be really specific, because the reason we write them down is so that we can go back when there's like a difficult day. You can go back and you can read all of your gratitudes and you can go, oh my gosh, yeah, like all of these things have come to me. When you have a hard day and you're really doubting who you are and what you've done, you can go back and read those acknowledgments and go, look at all of these steps that I've taken. I really have come a long way. I really am stepping out every day. And so that's why we write them down.
I think, you know what? Let's take a break first. And when we come back, I want to ask you about kids, raising kids.
Okay.
All right.
Why do 98% of beauty enthusiasts rave about coolness? It's all in the blend of ancient wisdom and modern science. Introducing Coolness, Pearlescent Face and Eye Serum Cream. This powerhouse combines the antioxidative power of schisandra berries, the glow of pearl powder, and the hydrating wonders of dragon's blood extract. It's like a time machine for your skin, making it radiant, firm, and oh so smooth. Inspired by ancient Chinese traditions and backed by modern nutritional science, this serum cream is perfect for dry, mature, and aging skin. It's time to unlock your inner glow with coolness. Treat your skin to the best of both worlds today.
Welcome back to Chronically Healthy Life. I forgot what show's called. So, Kelly, right in the beginning, you talked about how social media and all that has changed how kids handles fear. I feel like social media has actually infused more fear to the kids. What's your take on it? And how do you teach your kids to handle it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a double-edged sword. And I think that they're definitely more aware of what's going on in the world. They can know about something that's happening, on the opposite side of the world now, right? When we were growing up, the only way we got information was the newspaper, or, maybe we'd hear a little bit about it on the news, but I didn't watch the news, right? You found out things from an encyclopedia, right? Like, it's completely different, right? They can have a friendship with someone in Japan. They're definitely more vulnerable to outside sources, and cyberbullying and all of that kind of stuff, right? Like catfishing and all of that. So we definitely have conversations with them about not giving out personal information, and all of that kind of stuff. But they're actually pretty savvy. They are aware. They use aliases. Like they don't even give out their real name. They go by different names. And they research. They're totally researchers about what they hear and who they follow. We really we have the olders kind of manage what the youngers watch, because they're more aware of certain influencers and the language they use, or the way that what content they put on their pages, like with YouTube or whatever. And so we monitor, hey, you can watch these guys, but you can't watch these guys. But I mean, everything is so accessible. You can't be there 24/7, right? So social media is a challenge, but for my kids, it hasn't really been negative, in the sense they use it as support or to learn something new. We haven't had really any issues with social bullying or anything like that. They don't follow people where they compare themselves to the person and feel bad about themselves, or feel like they need to wear a certain brand, or they need to have a certain weight or anything like that. Not to say that my kids don't have body issues. I think that is just a human thing. Even actresses in Hollywood have body issues, right? And they have like perfect bodies. So there is still fear. They're not going to get away from that. But I think we definitely could do more. But there's 6 of them. You can't monitor it all the time. And as they get older, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, right? We do wait a while before we give them a phone or access to, social media right in their face. But, by the time they're in high school, you can't really control what they're doing or who they're seeing at school or what they're seeing at school. Like I'm way more innocent than they are, because when I was in school, people didn't have phones. People didn't, everything was different. Right. So they're just exposed to so many different things that I never was. And so we try to have conversations where they educate me on things that are going on now, because I'm not in their world. I'm in mine. I'm in coaching people, or I surround myself with people who are constantly wanting to learn skills or tools to improve themselves. They're also coaches, right? I live in a totally different world than they do, and so I love it when they can come in and they can talk to me. They trust me enough to talk to me about issues at school or with their friends, and also, like, we're a complete family, right? And a lot of their friends, their parents are divorced, and so they see the difference between our families, and we talk about that. We're a family of 6 kids, 8 total, right? So that's a lot different than a friend who is an only child or only has 2 siblings, right? We're a one income family, because I've been a stay-at-home mom and doing my coaching, an entrepreneur for most of their lives, for all of their lives. So that's a different dynamic as well, and we talk about that. So I think it's just keeping open the lines of communication, that they feel comfortable to come to us, talk to us about things. We're open when they come to come to us with things. We are definitely open and have conversations about depression or neurodivergent kind of things like ADD or whatever, because we have those things and we know it was scary to tell our parents. And so, a few of my kids are in therapy. Some of them see psychiatrists. Some of them are on medication. And there's no shame, there's no judgment in our house about that. And so we just try to be as aware as we can with them, and be open to talk when they actually come to talk, because teenagers don't necessarily share things with their parents. So when they want to talk, we're like, everything shuts down and we're like, okay, what do you want to talk about? And take full advantage of those moments when they are willing to open up.
So with the social media and everything, right? Your kids seems very savvy into protecting themselves. Is on the flip side, does that mean they're not really being comfortable showing who they really are to the outside world?
There's probably some aspect of that, they're definitely guarded. They can be very shy. They're not huge advocators for themselves. And so mom, I want to jump in and I want to take care of things. I want to talk to the teacher. I want to address, an issue at school. But they're at that age where they need to start standing up for themselves and going to the teacher and saying, I'm challenged with this. I need extra help for this. Which also I didn't really have that. As my mom was an educator, she wasn't one that was jumping in and saying, I'm going to talk to the teacher. She sees it as the kids not doing what they're supposed to be doing, not the teachers not teaching in a way that the kid can learn, but I try to balance that stepping in and allowing them to step forward. You know, it's not easy to talk to an authority figure. It's not easy to write an email, you know, when you're used to writing texts, you know. It's not easy to talk to someone who kind of holds in the balance your future, right? Like a counselor at school or a teacher. So, you know, we kind of guide them on things like that. We help them formulate their emails. We help them, you know, give them ideas of what to say. But it's definitely a balance as they get older of when you're going to step in and when you're going to step back. How much support you're going to give, especially now with my 23-year-old. He's still challenged with, you know, advocating for himself at work, you know, asking for more hours, or, you know, helping him, you know, show up on time, or, you know, different things like that, you know, how he manages his money, right? Like there's all these things that can come up as they grow up, where, you know, where is your line? Where is it where you're like, okay, they're an adult. I can give them suggestions. I can support them. I can believe in them. But ultimately, it's their decision on what they're going to do. I don't know if I answered that question really how you wanted to, but that's what came.
I think you did.
Yeah, I think that is amazing because, you know, one of the things, you know, Minna was just sort of asking because I was thinking the same thing, because you're seeing that a lot of kids are using aliases now, right? It sounds like your kid doesn't have FOMO, but, you know, do you think a lot of kids have FOMO with social media, you know, and if, you know, if kids are having that, you know, what is your advice for parents to help their kids, you know, deal with FOMO, you know, fear of missing out?
Yeah, I think all of us have FOMO. Honestly, you know, you see your friends post, you know, the picture of their clean house and going on vacations, and their kids being all, you know, clean and having matching outfits, and you think, oh, you know, I need to be doing that too, or I wish I was on a vacation, or you know, all that kind of stuff, because on social media we tend to present our best, you know,
Yes.
right? You know, everyone's happy, we're doing fun things. That's what gets posted, right? So I think all of us can have FOMO. And so I think that having the conversations of what are we doing? What does our family look like? How can we have more fun? You know, what are those desires, and can we make them happen as a family? Because when you're comparing, or you're feeling left out, or you're feeling like you're missing out on an experience, well, okay, how can we create that experience? Maybe we can't do the same thing, but maybe we can do something that, you know, our family can do, or I can support you in finding out how you can do that too. You know, like you want to get your kids in dance lessons or singing lessons, or, you know, have them be part of the band. Like you want your kids to be able to have those experiences, right? And so when they can express that to you, then, you know, you have that awareness, then you guys can work together on seeing how you can make it happen somehow. You know, so I think it really comes down to communication with any kind of relationship. The one you have with your kid, your husband, your friend, your parents, it all comes down to having the courage in having the conversation. I think all of us hold back who we really are to a certain degree. And so it's getting comfortable with who you are. And I think as a mother, the only thing I can really do is demonstrate that myself. Be an example of showing up who I am, being comfortable with myself, watching my language, and showing that to them of how you can show up as who you are. Now they use different names for protection. They don't want people, knowing who they are. But there's also times where they might not post a picture, or they get really mad when I post a picture of them. Like my one daughter, she wants to approve any picture that I post of her, or she doesn't want me to post it at all. She's like, Mom, that's going to be out there forever. What if I meet someone 10 years from now and they go back and look on your Facebook page and there's this awful picture of me? Like, she's very conscious of how anything online lasts forever, right? And so there is going to be aspects of that where they don't want certain things about their lives being put out, and it's my job to respect those boundaries and to get permission to post pictures, and so that's a new thing, because when they were younger, I wasn't asking their permission to post pictures, right? So, it's being more aware that they're becoming a person, and they have their own desires, their own dreams, and they may be nothing of what you pictured for them. And just getting to know what those are and realizing that they're going to constantly change. My kids used to want to create a cupcake store where you can do karaoke at night. That's not what they want anymore. One wanted to be an architect. Now they've all at some point wanted to be a YouTuber. But it's like what they want and what they desire right now is constantly changing. And I think encouraging that is good at this age, because you don't need to lock yourself in at 18 or 22 of what you're going to do your whole life. Even at 47, I don't need to lock myself in doing the same thing for the next 40 years. Your desires change. And as long as you're having that conversation, you can try to make some of those things come true.
Thank you for being so vulnerable, Kelly. That was so amazing. Quickly, running time on our show. What's the best way people to get hold of you?
Well, our information's at the bottom. Kelly@fearlessgenerations.org is my email. So you can email me there, or we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. You can find us there under Fearless Generations, or you can look up Kelly Fox. On my name kind of changes depending on where you go. So some form of Kelly Fox, you'll find me.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, that's a wrap. Join us here every Friday at 7 p.m. CST on e360tv.com, on the Vitality TV network, or on the YouTube channel at Chronically Healthy Life. And until then, stay vibrant, stay fierce, and stay ridiculously, unapologetically, chronically healthy. See you all next Friday.